Good morning and welcome to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike and my wife Marty and I homestead 6 acres in northeastern Kentucky. Today we're back out in the garden. Like I said, we're going to be out here probably every day until the snow falls. This is where all of it really happens, is out here. We've got food that needs to be prepared. You've just seen the pantry tour and there's a lot of holes there in the pantry we're looking to get filled. And this is where we're going to fill them. Today we've got something extra planned because we had some additional lumber left over from building these raised beds. If you remember, we had to switch the seats on these because the seat was too rough if it was built out of that hemlock. So I do have some 12-foot long, 6-inch wide hemlock that we need to use up. We're not going to waste that resource. We're going to make some good use out of it. And I figured out a way to use it to build some 4x4 beds that'll allow us to get some extra raised bed space. And this is a bare bones, bare minimum kind of raised bed. I thought that might be useful for some of you out there if you're having a hard time figuring out how you're going to get started financially on growing your own food. Have a look at this video. If you're concerned that financially you're not able to start growing a garden right now, maybe you just don't have the money necessary to build one of these raised beds, I guarantee you can find the money to build one of these. I'm going to give you a price breakdown on exactly what it is we're building and show you how inexpensively you can get into having your own garden and raising your own food. But we are going to have to deal with this wind today. We have the possibility of some storms coming later on this afternoon. This wind is just really kicking up already this morning. Hopefully not too much of that's coming through on the microphone. We're going to go ahead and get busy. We've got work to do, and the wind's not going to stop us. And that's what we're going to be building today. It's just a 4x4 bed. Real simple, real basic. There's not a lot of moving parts, not a lot of different materials you're going to need. One very important material is going to be the cardboard that goes in the bottom. This is going to prevent the weeds from growing up underneath your bed and coming up through your plants. So you're going to do some weed control using this cardboard. You can see some of the cardboard sticking out from underneath the edge of the bed. So that's what we're using it for, is to prevent weeds by covering the bottom of the planter. And for basic materials, things are pretty simple. We have all of that 1x6 rough cut hemlock. This is 12 feet long, so I can build a 4x4 raised bed with a little bit more than one of these. So for every 4 boards, I can build 3 planters. So that works out math-wise pretty well. And the only other material that I'm using on this build is just some little chunks of 2x4. Now I did take a 10-foot long 2x4. It was just an old one in pretty bad shape. So this was really scrap wood I had hanging around in the barn, and just cutting it into 6-inch blocks. And these blocks go in the corners to help you assemble the bed. And it's always good to have a couple of partners out here if you're going to be building. A few extra hands always helps out. These guys aren't going to be much help. And I'm going to show you how to do this solo, so one person can be able to do this build even with just a minimum of tools. And those simple and basic materials is really all you're going to need, but you will have to give some consideration to your bedding material. Exactly what are you going to put in there? We'll talk a little bit later about how to calculate how many bags of whatever you're able to get you are going to need, but it's a pretty straightforward calculation to determine how many bags you're going to need of that stuff. So you can figure out what your pricing will be. I'll share with you what my pricing was when we get to the end of the video. Along with those materials, there are a few tools you're going to need. You'll need a saw to get the lumber cut into the right sizes, and you'll need some way to join the boards together. Now that could be a nail gun or just a hammer and nails, or it could be a screwdriver with some wood screws. I wouldn't pay too much attention to the quality of the screws or nails that you use. These beds aren't going to hold together for more than 3 or 4 years anyway, but they will help you get a good fertile area of ground ready to go so that you can plant into it this year. So we are trying to keep costs down on these beds. We want to do this as inexpensively as possible. That's why we're using this hemlock for that. I'm going to give you the price on this stuff when we get to the end. But the first thing we got to do is cut the blocks for the corners. And the boards are 6 1/4 inches, so I'm just cutting 6-inch blocks out of old 2x4s. So anything left over in the barn suddenly becomes a very valuable piece of lumber. And y'all seen me do this before in the front yard when we were building the original beds. Doing this exactly the same way. Y'all, this doesn't have to be perfect. Approximately 6 inches is good enough. So a 2x4, typical 2x4s, like that you would use for studs for framing, are going to be 8 feet long. So out of an 8-foot 2x4, you should be able to get 16 of these small blocks for the corners. So it doesn't take a whole bunch of lumber in order to make one of these beds. The original beds that I started with, that I've shown you already, I started with a 10-foot long 2x4. That was 20 of these little 6-inch blocks. And then of course we have the 12-foot long pieces of hemlock. So a 12-foot board divided into 4-foot sections is going to give you 3 sides for each one of these 12-foot boards. So for every 4 boards, you're going to be able to build 3 beds. So 4 boards get you 3 beds. Wait till you see the price on it. It's not that bad. Be real careful when you're making this last cut on these small pieces. Make sure you're keeping your fingers out of the way. If you are going to use your T-square, put it upside down on the board so that your fingers are on the large portion, and that way you can keep them well back from the edge of the saw. There are a lot of woodworkers out there that are missing fingers. There's even one guy I like watching on YouTube called Stumpy Nubs. That's the name of his channel. And that's what he does, is woodworking. So keep in mind, saws are dangerous things. They are tools. Should be used appropriately. But we are homesteading, so every place that you need to be becomes a work surface. So that a 4-wheeler and a trailer can be a workbench if you need it to be. Just a word of warning, if you are working off of your 4-wheeler, or maybe you're working off the tailgate of your pickup truck, be sure to take a little extra time before you start that saw up and make sure that you're not going to cut through your tailgate or your fender on your 4x4. So my plan this morning was to build 3 of these beds because I have 4 more of these 12-foot pieces of hemlock. So 3 beds times 4 blocks, 1 for each corner, is going to mean 12 blocks that I need. And I did have a couple of them left over from the last batch. So we've got 10 blocks here. I've got 2 left over from the last batch of blocks that I cut. So this should be enough for us to get these 3 beds put together. And then we got to get the hemlock cut to length. So we need 48 inches for each board. This is a little bit harder to do off of a makeshift work surface. Heavy wind. Especially in heavy wind. And don't forget, if you're working with this rough cut stuff, to square off the end of your board before you start taking measurements. Stinking wind makes this impossible, man. It's actually good practice to use your previous cut for the next cut. So if we mark using the last board, that's going to ensure that all these boards end up exactly the same length. The real key to that, though, is to always make sure that you use the same board for every single measurement. So we're going to set that board aside. If I end up cutting this next one just a fraction longer, and then I mark and cut the next one a fraction longer, we could be 3 or 4 inches off by the time we get through cutting pieces. So to make 3 beds, we're going to need 4 sides for each bed. That's going to mean 12 of these 48-inch long pieces of hemlock. That was 3 out of 1 12-foot board, so we've got 3 more to cut up here. You know, this wind makes everything a lot harder, including making these cuts. Just take your time. We're not in any kind of a hurry. We're just trying to get everything done safely. Not only do I not want to lose a finger, I don't want to waste any wood either, because I have just enough board footage to take care of these beds. So most of what's going in the beds that we're building right now is going to be larger plants, things like squash. So spaghetti squash and acorn squash, also watermelons. We don't eat a lot of watermelons, but it's kind of nice to have them in season, so we're going to grow some of those. And I also think Marty's got quite a few of her herbs that are planned for these little small beds. That way we can just leave those herbs in place, especially the ones that are perennial, so they'll come back year after year. Don't forget to square up your board. And assembling these is real simple. You just need 4 of the sideboards and 4 of the little corner braces. So the plan is to just allow the boards to run past one another, just like this, so there'll be a little bit of an overlap. And then we're just going to stick a block in here, and then we could run screws in this way and screws in this way to hold everything together at the corner. Now this can be a bit tricky to do working with one person, but it's not impossible if you just get a few of these little clamps. Line up that first board, clamp it in place. Now I can put some screws in it, and that's going to make it easier to attach to the other board once the block is attached here. And I mentioned connectors, whether you use nails or screws, this is where you'd start using those. I'm just using the 2.5-inch deck screw. It's what I had the most of, so that's what I'm using for this. A 2-inch would have worked just fine. And I am putting them in at a slight angle because 2.5 inches would definitely go all the way through here. I don't want to have to deal with the tip of the screw on the inside. And then once again with the clamp, give a little clamping pressure. And that'll hold everything in place while we run some screws in. The important part to remember here is that you're building a garden bed. It's going to hold plants. The plants are going to spill out all over the edges. You're never going to see if there's slight imperfections in the corners. We're not trying to build furniture here down to a 32nd of an inch. We're not even trying to do rough framing to an 1/8 of an inch. As long as the bed holds together on the sides and keeps the material you're planting in place, you're good to go. And we're building a 4x4 bed. It just seems appropriate to keep a 4-foot spacing in between them. So as I'm assembling, I'm going to be taking some measurements and just trying to line this up with the other beds. Y'all, there's no right or wrong way to handle a cup board like this when you're building a raised bed. Now, if I was building a wall, I would want to make sure that it crowned to the top, but we're just putting a raised bed together. So this can go either way. I'm going to put the convex of the curve to the inside of the bed, meaning the crown of the curve towards the inside of the bed. That way when I run the screws in, it'll tend to flatten the board out, and we'll be pushing out on the middle of the board, pushing the tension back in the other direction. And I am turning my block on this one. I don't know that it makes any difference whatsoever. It's just what I've been doing. So I'm making sure I leave a gap to overlap the board next to it so that they fit up correctly. And so this is some of that imperfection that I was talking about. You just kind of work around this and get it good enough. It just has to hold the dirt in place. So now that we've got the frame all set together, it's just a matter of making sure we've got it in the position we want it in. Ooh, that's really tight. That's closer. So when I built the fence, it's not perfectly square, and I started by measuring off of the fence, so things aren't exactly perfectly square out here between the beds. But again, it's a garden. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's not intended to be perfect. It's meant to hold the growing medium in place. We want the compost to stay where we put it, and we're trying to keep the plants in a place where they can grow without weed pressure. So that's the next thing we need to do here, is get some cardboard up underneath this so that all of the grass that's underneath and the weeds that would tend to want to choke everything out that we put down here get cut off. They're not able to grow through. This is really challenging in the wind to work with cardboard boxes. Yes, if you're worried about perfection, you can go find a knife. But I find it's easy enough just to tear the stuff. And I just lift up one corner, slide the box all the way out so that it's sticking out the sides. Not only is that going to help hold the cardboard in place, but it'll make sure that things aren't growing in from just underneath the edge of the bed. So now all that's left is to bring up about a trailer and a half of compost. That's going to fill this bed up. Got two other beds to assemble. I'm going to put those together real quick, and then we'll get busy putting the compost in. So what exactly is it that motivates us and gets us to come out and spend our entire day putting screws into pieces of wood to hold a pile of dirt in place to grow some plants? Sometimes I think people get the wrong idea about what it is that we're doing. And I want to make sure you understand clearly we have several motivators. The first is just that we observe what's going on in the world around us. We've been watching the food distribution system in our country and in the world for quite some time. We've been aware that certain problems in the food industry have been cropping up, that industry is motivated more by profits and is focused more on the bliss point than they are on providing healthy, quality food to the citizens of this country. The only way you're going to make sure you have good quality food is if you grow it yourself. That's what we discovered, and that's one of the reasons why we grow it. But that's really not a good enough reason to spend all this extra time out here doing this. We also truly believe that this is simply our God-given duty. It's our job. It's what we were appointed to do in the beginning. If you go back to the book of Genesis and take a look at what God gave Adam to do, he was created for a purpose, and that purpose was to tend and keep the garden. So it seems only right that since that was our first instruction as humans, we should continue to follow along with those instructions. We've also been very aware in the last few years of just how tied into the world system of looking for more we really were. It's one of those things that's difficult to escape because all parts of society tell you that all you need is just a little bit more. Doesn't matter what you need more of, you just need a little bit more of it. And what we're discovering is that that's just not true. There are certain things that if you have enough of, it's enough. And again, the Bible gives us some very clear instructions. It says if you have food and raiment, in other words, you have something to eat and you've got some clothes on your back, then learn to be content with that. Now, obviously, we're not 100% content. We're out here growing our garden. We're increasing its size and increasing our ability to generate food. But we're not doing so just to get more. We want to make sure that we've got enough food in the pantry that's going to take us into the next growing season and hopefully a little bit beyond, in case there's some devastation that comes into our world and crops don't do so good. But we're not like other homesteaders. We're not out here looking to find different revenue streams that we can tap into. We have no intention of starting a market garden. We don't plan to raise animals to harvest for meat that we're then going to sell. Not even sure that I would ever build things that I would sell in the open market. While I may use my skills and we may use our resources to help and support neighbors, we're not looking to participate in the world's economy through what we're doing here. This is all about us getting enough, not about us finding more. If you're looking at the homesteading life and trying to figure out just how you're going to generate a little bit more revenue or a little bit more profit, you're heading down the wrong path. This is not a business. This is a way of life. But if you will dedicate yourself to learning to be content with enough to eat, then returning to the land, returning to labor, and returning to life just makes sense. And just like that, we've gotten all the beds put together, got them filled up with the compost. We took a few trips. It's about a trailer and a half per bed. I promised you I would tell you how you calculate exactly how much you're going to need for these. That's just a simple multiplication problem. It's a 4x4 bed, so that's 4 feet by 4 feet, and it's 6 inches tall, which is half a foot. So 4 foot by 4 foot is 16 times 1/2 will give you 8. So you're going to need 8 bags of 1 cubic foot material if you're going to fill this from a big box store. So you'll have to price that stuff out in your local area to find out exactly what your cost of building these little 4x4 beds would be. If I went out and bought these materials today, this would be $7.42 in lumber, $12.48 for the compost. My cost was only $1.56 a cubic foot. And so that's going to bring us to about $19.90, so about $20, and we could have built these small beds. And if I had to buy the compost in a big box store, you're looking at about $36 for one of these beds. But compare that to one of these larger raised beds, and these of course were built more for the gardener than the garden. Both of the raised beds will grow food. All you got to do is put the plants in them. But these were $171 a piece after we put the new seats on them. So cost per bed, $36. If you were to put Beauregard sweet potatoes in here, got a slightly lower than average yield of 4 pounds per plant, you're going to get 36 pounds of sweet potatoes. At $1.14 a pound, that's $41.04. So that's essentially what it cost us to build each one of these beds. And that's just the raw costs of what we paid for the lumber. And then of course for the compost that went into it. Your cost may vary. You may have to use a different lumber. You may not be able to find this rough cut hemlock or a comparable board that's priced as well as this was. But you can get out and build these beds. And this is not a terribly expensive way to get started in gardening. Be able to get some food that you grew into your pantry. If you're not growing your own food, it's time for you to get busy doing that. It's time to return to the land, return to labor, and return to life. We do appreciate you joining us on the channel today. If you haven't subscribed yet, would you take a moment and please do that? While you've got that window open, hit that thumbs up icon. That's going to let the algorithm know you enjoyed the video and they'll share it out with more people. We'll see you next time.